I didn't know Celia stopped volunteering. As far as I knew, she hadn't visited the studio in 9 months. I had been there most days, working on my own art. Celia and I kept such a brutal schedule prior to that September that I didn't really need a job while she was away. But it was a waste. I made terrible art in that time. I couldn't think. Everything that I made was just a response to what had happened to my adopted home. Not America, but to New York. It was too soon to make anything that I'd ever show anyone. It was all overwrought. Like a teenager writing sad love poems after the love of his life decided to be his love of 3 weeks. And it was immensely lonely working alone in the studio. I wanted Celia to return. That's not to say that I did not hear from her. We spoke by phone, though always briefly. I'd ask her if I'd see her in the studio soon, but she always gave a very long sigh, almost exasperated, as if it was a very difficult question to answer. I didn't bother telling her that the gallery regularly left messages for her on the studio's machine. I assumed they left messages on her machine as well. And when she sounded so bereft, I wasn't sure if I should ask to see her. I waited for her to invite me to her apartment, or to invite me to lunch, or to invite me anywhere. But she never mentioned seeing each other. I was concerned, but I also felt that I could not press her. One day in early summer, I was working in the studio, continuing another project I did not believe in, at least not at first. I tried to film myself dropping stacks of 1 foot by 1 foot plates of glass. The stacks stood at opposite sides of the room. I walked up to one, picked it up, and dropped it. The bottom panes broke in the first drop, so I picked up the entire stack again and dropped it in front of myself. The bottom made a nice crunching sound when it hit the shards I'd left on the floor. I did this over and over again until I was left with a pile of broken glass at my feet. I then walked across the room and did the same thing with the other stack, picking it up and dropping it until I was left with one pane that made the loudest shattering sound of them all. I felt it actually went quite well, though I tried to hide my happiness in case I wanted to keep my final walk toward the camera in the piece. But when I arrived at the camcorder, I noticed that the red light was not on. I picked up the camera and tried to view what I just recorded, but when I squinted through the viewfinder, I saw nothing. Only the blue screen waited for me to finally press record. I had reached my limit. If my art hadn't floundered for so long, I would have been reasonable. I would have told myself that I can easily order more panes of glass. It wouldn't take long, and I could redo the piece soon. I might even redo it better than the first time. But after so many months of failure, I was not reasonable. I had reached my limit. I began swearing at the camcorder, telling it how stupid it was, how infantile, how obscene. I cursed it. I cursed technology, pacing back and forth, my arms flailing around like a madman's, which is completely unlike me. I picked up the camcorder. It was still screwed into the tripod. I lifted it all over my head as if about to throw it, but the small part of me that remained reasonable told me, "No, Vicente, you mustn't throw the camera." So I set it down on its side, and I saw a clay jar sitting on the floor, full of paintbrushes. I decided that I wanted to break the clay jar, so I picked it up, wound up as if I was on the mound at Shea Stadium, and threw the jar as hard as I could, aiming for a wall. I was not a pitcher. I did not have good aim. I hit one of these bears that I built nearly a year before. One of the bears for Celia's still unfinished epic. I hit it right in the snout. And the bear, rather unceremoniously, tipped over onto the floor. And when the bear hit the floor, I realized I must have been very overworked when I made him, because his head easily broke off and slid 3 feet away from his body. When I walked up to the head, I nudged it with my toe as if it might be alive, and I wanted to make sure it really died and would not bite me. The bear's head was hollow. It was quite large. I considered whether it was large enough to fit over my head. I turned to the camera, which I had left toppled over, the tripod's legs sticking up like a drunk who had just been punched off his bar stool. I turned again to the bear's head. After checking the camera's viewfinder 5 times to make sure without a doubt that it was recording, I walked 10 feet in front of the lens. In the video, I stand in the middle of the screen next to the bear's head. I then fit the bear's head over my own like a mask, and I continue to stand without moving for 15-20 seconds. I am barefoot. When I was a child, my mother made me wear the brimmed hat, the white shirt with the open collar, the loose white pants rolled up to the ankles, the red handkerchief tied around my neck, a wide red belt tied around my waist, and I danced the bambuco. A large group of us children did, boys and girls. The bambuco is a romantic folkloric dance where the man uses the handkerchief to flirt with the woman in their courtship. Now, I did not think of it as a courtship dance when I was a child. It was merely a tradition that my mother wanted me to uphold, though I did love dancing it with the pretty girls in my neighborhood. By 2002, I probably hadn't danced the bambuco in maybe 30 years, but the muscle memory was still there, what I had learned as a boy in Medellin. In the video, I raise my arms as if dancing a waltz with one of those pretty girls, and I lead her, twisting my hips, crossing my left foot over my right, then stepping back, putting my feet together. And I twist to my left, crossing my right foot in front of my left, repeating this again and again until the tempo changes. And I begin moving faster, softly kicking my left foot to the side, almost bouncing as I do these moves, leading the invisible girl in my hands until the tempo changes again and I drop my hands from her. I put them behind my back. Perhaps we were flirting in our own little way, and I zigzag between the invisible girls from my youth, perhaps searching for a new invisible partner, quickly moving between the girls. And then I stand in place, lightly stepping my feet as the girls begin dancing through the room, moving from boy to boy. And then I repeat the first moves, swiveling my hips, taking steps with one foot in front of the other, all of course with the bear's head masking my face. And in the video, unknown to me because there were no eye holes in the bear's snout, the viewer sees Celia walking into the studio behind me. She stops only a few steps in and watches me dance the bambuco alone with the bear's head on. She stands silently, intently watching. There is no music, and I am oblivious. She appears happy, as if she's seeing something from her own childhood that she's forgotten for 30 years and is only then remembering. And the nostalgia in her face is both joyful but tinged with regret because she realizes that she's missed this thing for a very long time. On screen, I finally stop dancing. I face the camera, I remove the bear's head, and Celia's voice startles me. Behind me, she says, I didn't know you could dance like that. I edited the video to stop there, but in real life, when life continued, I turned to her, and I approached her first slowly, because I did not know if I should hug her after not seeing her in close to a year. I did not know what she wanted of me. That's just how long it had been. But she met me halfway, and we embraced. I thought that the dead had risen. She said that she had not visited the studio since the previous year. She very rarely spoke to anyone at her gallery. She did not make art. Some of her relatives from Iowa had visited, but she somehow had not left the island of Manhattan the entire year. I don't know if that was completely true. She once said that she'd never been to New Jersey when she certainly had. But regardless, she was finally ready to get off of the island, at least for a day. And I was as well, because I'd barely left the 5 boroughs in that time. We took my van up along the Hudson. We had planned on going to Storm King, an hour north of the city, to see the outdoor sculptures. We both realized that we'd never been, but before we turned west, we stopped for lunch in Peekskill. As soon as we stepped out of the van, Celia commented on how lush the forests were near the river. She said, "After being cooped up for so long, this looks like the Amazon rainforest." She said she should move her studio up there. She certainly wouldn't be the first artist to do so. Many others had already moved upstate. We bought sandwiches at a deli and carried them down to the river, where we found a picnic table to eat at. Everything was so quiet. If we didn't speak, we heard birds chirping. If the birds didn't chirp, we heard the small wake of passing boats lapping on shore. If the waves did not lap, we heard each other chewing and sometimes swallowing. There was a sense of calm that I don't think either of us had felt in a very long time. Not only since the previous year, but throughout our lives in the city. The quiet was finally broken by a small speedboat humming down the river. It pulled an inner tube carrying a teenage girl. The girl shrieked with delight as the boat spun her around in figure eights. I turned to Celia, and she was smiling and leaning forward as if she too wanted to jump into the water to join them. She said, "Things aren't all bad," and leaned back at my side. I asked, "Oh no?" and smiled back at her. She said, "When I first moved to New York, this river was so polluted that people wouldn't get in it. I bet even way up here. Now it's clean enough to get a mouthful of it sprayed at you while you're whipped around on a tube." I laughed and said, "I'm not so sure that's a good thing." She lightly smacked my knee with the back of her hand and said, "Don't be such a bummer," and smiled. She stood up, watching the boat go by again. "We should wave them down and see if we can join them,"